Welcome to Sikhcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Beadbi is back in the news, and this time the Panjab government has passed a new anti-sacrilege law. What is the larger context around the new law? How has Beadbi, irreverence, been dealt with historically? What are its Panthic and legal understandings? How does it relate to the reverence Sikhs collectively show to the Guru Granth Sahib? And how, given recent cases in the news, can we understand individual and collective responses informed by the current realities on the ground?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a research associate here at Sikh. I'm joined today by Harinder Singh, who is the senior fellow at Sikh. He also co-founded the Sikh Research Institute and the Panjab Digital Library, envisioned the Kaur and Singh Academy, and organized the free Akal Takht campaign. Guru Fateh Harinder Singh, thanks for joining me today.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Okay, so there's a lot of context setting that I feel like we have to do for this conversation. So back in 2022, you and I had a conversation about Beadbi, or irreverence. And it was another current events podcast that we were doing where we talked about what this word actually means, how Sikhs have sort of individually and collectively tried to respond to what has been a long and painful pattern of attacks on the Guru Granth Sahib, met with silence in the legal system. So this was 4 years ago. Today we're picking that conversation back up because of what's in the news. So in April, the Panjab Legislative Assembly unanimously passed the Jagat Jot Sri Guru Granth Sahib Satkar Amendment Act 2026, which is this new anti-sacrilege law with pretty intense penalties of up to life imprisonment. So I wanted to kind of start us by sort of framing Beadbi again for our listeners. What is it, and how does it kind of figure into these larger blasphemy laws? And then as we go on, I'd actually like us to dive into what the law actually does and how we can think about the larger questions of sovereignty and governance that it raises for us. So to begin, can you please help us remember what Beadbi is, and how it sort of figures into these larger, maybe global blasphemy laws that we might see in other places?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it in the Sikh context first. So let's start there. Look, the Beadbi, when we say it is Be and Adab, Adab to Adbi banaya. So this is coming really from Farsi or Persian. In that context, in its root or its connotations, it refers to many different things. It can mean how we educate, what the culture is, what does being polite mean, what is a proper demeanor, and things of that nature. Eventually, in the religious arena, it's, we say what is the moral code, but in the secular world, we say what kind of ethical code does it develop. Now, when this word is imported in South Asia, and it comes to Punjabi element as we see it in last, let's say, 100 years or so, it gets used to talk about, in English, we'll use words like disrespect, or something is not decent, which means it's indecent, or not reverential enough, or irreverent. And that's really more of the connotation in the Punjabi Sikh world, especially when it comes to Guru Granth Sahib itself. So this is how in our thought, in our words, in our deeds, in our behaviors, how are we creating and implementing protocols to assure there's a highest level of reverence and respect to Guru Granth Sahib. So if there is no adab, the absence of adab, the absence of reverence creates be-adab, or without adab, or without reverence. And then when you go into the legalities of that, which is the context today, and the last 20 plus years, and globally in South Asian context, it starts, because in South Asia, it goes back to 1860s when the British created the first laws. And the terms they use is sacrilege and blasphemy. And these are the words which are still used being globally. So blasphemy laws, sacrilege law, desecration laws, they come into play in the codification world. What the state does, either from a religious code or a secular code.
Yeah, that's helpful, and it also makes me wonder a little bit about how to understand this as like a diaspora Sikh, if I can use that term. But, when we talked 4 years ago, there was this like complete sort of ignorance that I had about the long and painful history of Beadbi sort of incidents in Punjab, outside of Punjab as well. And I was completely kind of unaware of the attempts to go through like legal means to actually get this addressed. So when I first heard about this law, I was like, okay, finally, great. Like kind of uncritically thought about it as just like good news. And so on the surface, it does sound like, okay, this is the accountability like Sikhs have been demanding for so long. But then reading the news within weeks of it, being passed, we see that the Akal Takht Sahib has spoken out against it, raised issues with it. The SGPC has raised alarms. And so have many other like Sikh scholars and sort of thought leaders and religious leaders, both in Punjab and outside of Punjab. So maybe you can start us with what is happening? Like, what does this law actually say? What does it actually do? So that we can kind of understand what it is that we're dealing with before we get into a deeper conversation.
Yeah, let's put it in as I think you kind of alluded to it also, let's put a little bit of a global context. So we don't think this is only happening with Sikhs in Punjab, in South Asia only. Look, the debate on whether even blasphemy law should exist has been going on for a long time. Okay? And it is still continuing. I remember when we last talked and I had looked it up, there were 84 countries which had blasphemy laws even now. And if I recall it right, last year there was a report I had read. I'm trying to recall the name of the report and the organization. Basically, there's a campaign which is there's a global campaign to end blasphemy laws. And they put out a report in 2024, I think. And they said blasphemy laws still exist in 89 countries. So there have been more changes globally which have come in blasphemy laws, while the Europe, which started large part of this, we like to think it was only in Afghanistan or Iran because they are in the news that these things happen. No, I mean, this was in Indian context. Actually, I shouldn't even say Indian context, in the British context, which was not just the subcontinent of India or South Asia. I mean, they were ruling Yemen from India, from Bombay as well. So when we're looking at these blasphemy laws, they're very much an issue even now. Now, when there is a conversation about this in the globe, it is in the context of that this is also violating freedom of thought. This is also violating, and this is largely said by humanists and the atheists and the non-religious, but it does include religious voices as well. So within the Sikh fold, this conversation is also taking place. What really is blasphemy? Because the laws use this word, or sacrilege. And are these even our terms? And what do we mean when we say Beadbi or adab, as we talked about it? So there is this tension between these blasphemy laws and this freedom of thought and expressions and religious sort of sentiments. By the way, Europe is going through this as well. So I mean, Denmark has passed some laws on this in the last 10 years as well. So my point in sharing this is very much a live conversation, and there are global campaigns happening on this on both sides of it. That said, what you're seeing now is that between what has happened currently is an act which was passed in a hurry, and it has been signed and became a law even in more hurry. So when people don't review, and you're seeing this in US, you have seen this in the Indian parliament. So this is a global thing. When something is being done in a haste, and it becomes from act to law very quickly without proper reviews, even by the people who are voting on it, something ain't right with it. So there's a question of intent not just pragmatically whether Sikhs have been asking for it or not as well. Now, what we do need to understand in this case is this is a process. When we last talked 4 years ago, large part of this we had contextualized happened because of 2015 incidents of sacrileges or sacrilege, blasphemy, desecration. We can use that interchangeably in this context, although they carry a very specific meaning when it comes to the legalities. A large part of those in Punjab were happening with Guru Granth Sahib. And they were happening at a very large level where Sikhs had a whole Bargadi Morcha on it, for example. And this is where Akal Takht, SGPC, State of Punjab, Indian state, and their laws, I don't know what's the word to use, but they all came in confrontation. And there's a movement to do something about it by Sikhs of Punjab. That movement, yes, many things happened. For example, in 2008, it was SGPC which asked for, we need some regulations, but their scope was very little. Between 2008 and 2026, they had 2 amendments to that, which the national government one time didn't sign. They had different rules of IPCs, which Punjab tried to invoke, which also didn't get signed. So all I'm saying is there are a lot of legal manipulations happening. There are political manipulations happening. And even though SGPC asked for this, SGPC was silent about it in its initial days of current phenomena. Almost everyone on the political side of Punjab, of the ruling parties, actually agreed with it, almost everyone. It was unanimously passed in the Punjab legislature, Vidhan Sabha as they call it. But almost unanimously, the scholars, the theologians, and now SGPC and SGPC-appointed Jathedars, Punjab-based organizations, India-based organization, and diaspora-based organization largely are opposing it. So that's all we need to know in a simplistic way. Yes, we need some protections, but the question is what protection? What enforcement? What is the intent of the law? What will be the enforceability of the law? And all of those are being questioned right now.
Yeah, and I think, so this is getting at something that I was also wondering about, of like, if these like Sikh institutions and these Sikh theologians and thought leaders are all saying that like they weren't consulted, they don't agree, it gets at this like larger question of like governance and sovereignty. I think maybe we don't understand at least sitting where I am. I don't understand fully. One of the things that I kept hearing in conversations amongst like diaspora Sikhs was like, well, you live in a modern nation state, you have to deal with the law of the land. Sort of what are you complaining about, basically? And then there's also this added thing of like, same thing of how I sort of said earlier that I found it encouraging at first because I wasn't thinking about its implications and I didn't actually read what was in the law. But this other sentiment of like, for so long, this is what you've wanted type of rhetoric. So I guess my question is, if we're going to talk about sovereignty, which is a word that has come up so much in the sort of feedback and statements against this law, can you help us understand the role of Guru, Panth, and Granth? No small question. When it comes to thinking through these matters, creating actual mechanisms to address these matters, and how this has kind of, completely strayed from our own sort of traditions of self-governance, especially when it comes to the Guru Granth Sahib?
Well, the self-governance has been the issue for Sikhs, in a legal context at least, for at least 101 years now. Sovereignty has so many angles, but even in the context of Guru Granth Sahib, like we said, the British India laws were based from 1860s law, which was passed by, I don't know which year But the 1860 is when they say the act was in by the British government, and then they created what they call IPCs, which is Indian Penal Code, which is how an act is enforced in legal terms. And they did that. In fact, I pulled that out in 1927 for Section 295A. So 1927 is when enforcement of these understandings of these sacrileges and blasphemies are operating in both sides of Punjab, India, and Pakistan. Okay. Now, that said, remember at the same time what happened. In 1925, they created a Sikh Gurdwara Act. So for 1925 to 2026, you have 101 years of legally the word Guru Granth Sahib is involved in these things now. So you're dealing with modern nation states, earlier an imperial state under the British, British India, to now the modern states of India and Pakistan. They follow similar laws. And those laws, Sikhs have been fighting from day one. We can't say there's a monolith on this because there never is when it comes to legal issues and political issues. But from a Sikh perspective, Guru Granth Sahib is the word. It is not just Granth. And when Granth is the Guru for the Sikhs, which is what Guru Gobind Singh made it in 1708, 2 days before he left this earth, and he entrusted that Guruship to Guru Khalsa Panth. Khalsa is the Sikh collective of the Panth. They are not just in declaration, self-declaration that they were following the way of Guru Nanak. They are saying as a collective, we are following the way of Guru Nanak Sahib. And that's the Khalsa Panth part. They were given Guruship, which means they are the ones who will be deciding in all matters related to Guru Granth Sahib. And it largely operated like that, within the Guru period, within the post-Guru period in the 18th century. Sure, they were burning and looting and desecrating, but we did not allow anyone to make laws about how to regulate Guru Granth Sahib.
Yeah.
In last 100 years, this is happening. Remember, I'm saying in 1927, they're taking the law and making a legal systems out of it. Indian Penal Code, they call it. Section 295. And 295 is important because then there's 295A over the years. There was the introduction of 295AA over last 20 years. Some of them didn't get passed. Some of them are games between Indian state of Punjab versus the Union government of India. And eventually, in this case, and which is what I want to say, because next year is an election year, and because previous two governments didn't do anything about it, this government, which is AAP, the political party is Aam Aadmi Party. It was voted unanimously by all political parties in Punjab, which includes the Congress, which includes the Akalis in that sense, whatever their representation might be. It includes the BJPs, whatever their representation might be, and others. My point is, it is approved and then signed into law by the governor, who is installed for Punjab by the BJP, which is the central government or the union government. My whole point in mentioning this is, sure, in 2008, as Shomani Akali Dal was a partner of Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, they asked for a particular things. This one is an umbrella. This one is not just about Guru Granth Sahib. In between, they went through many other things, including other religious texts. All I want to say here, Jasleen, is this, that if you want to understand governance, Sikh governance hasn't been operating. Sikh governance for last 101 years have been run by the laws of British India to now Union of India. Now, their relationship between center and Punjab, as center being the Delhi and Punjab being run from Chandigarh, what you're seeing is an outcome of those games and those manipulations in order to show or cater to particular kinds of things such that something can be said about by these two major parties involved, that they are doing something for Sikhs in Punjab. Now, are they doing something? Are they going to create severe punishments? Are they going to really help in getting rid of desecrations? Or are they going to make sure there are going to be more severe punishments? Those are the kind of questions which are on everyone's minds, including many Sikhs in Punjab and outside. This really is a legal manipulation for electioneering, which is about 10 months away.
Yeah, which I think I had said to you before we started that it seems odd that this is happening so fast when we've been asking for this for so many years. And I think there was some kind of like parade of victory or something that happened. Is this correct? Of like certain politicians celebrating the act getting passed. Yeah.
So what happens is there are elements in there which make sense, but there are elements which don't make sense. So we can't just do, okay, well, part of it is good and part of it is bad.
Sure.
The larger part is the state doesn't have a right to regulate Guru Granth Sahib.
Yeah.
In fact, if I may bring in here, I'm just recalling this. I remember I was in India at the time in 1999 when there were conversations about changing the Sikh Gurdwara Act, and actually an amendment to do was circulated. What is important to bring in here is in 2000 there was a Supreme Court judgment in India, Indian Supreme Courts, which actually declared Guru Granth Sahib to be what they call juristic person. Now, what that really in legal lingo, it means it's a legal person, not a natural person like you and I are. Now, again, the intention would have been good, but then there were questions even back then. I remember having conversations with even law professors at Guru Nanak Dev University, to people in Chandigarh and some prominent lawyers at the time. So I understood that there were things which were going to help Sikhs because of the property rights and things of that nature. But what it did do was, it was also equating it because Hindu idols are considered juristic person. A mosque is considered a juristic person. A Gurdwara is considered a juristic person. And at that time, it was actually a SGPC court case against Somnath and others, where Guru Granth Sahib was declared a juristic person. Now, the judgment also said that Guru Granth Sahib is not an idol, and Guru Granth Sahib and Sikhi does not believe in idol worship. But at the same time, when you open up something to a legalistic definitions, general public doesn't understand it, and even for legal purposes, how it gets implemented for particular rights is anybody's guess.
Yeah, I think that really flows beautifully into kind of some of the specifics I wanted to get into, to sort of unpack with you about like things that others have pointed out are like problematic, if we can use that word, or like concerning. And maybe we can delve into some of those. So like one of the things that really struck me was, we live in sort of like an age of unprecedented surveillance. And there is this thing in the law, this move to maintain a kind of a public register of records, which, there's records of printing, storage, distribution of the Guru Granth Sahib. And the Jathedar actually warned that sort of making this public information available or making this information public could be weaponized. People could kind of falsely report Beadbi cases in an attempt to, for all kinds of reasons. There's also this concern that was raised about just like surveillance of Sikhs, especially in a post-84 world where we know voter rolls were used to locate and then target Sikhs. And then there's also this question of like when you sort of put I'm trying to use my words carefully and respectfully here, but when you put a barcode or you assign a number to a sarup of the Guru Granth Sahib, which we have this kind of like utmost living relationship with, isn't that also itself a kind of objectification of the Guru in like an attempt to, surveil and track? So these are this is like a sort of multitude of objections to just this one element of the law. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that. Like, what do you see as potentially concerning about this part of the law? And what risks do you feel this might create for, ordinary Sikh households and also gurdwaras? I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Look, so Let's work with the word, you use the word objectification. Let's work with that. Okay. Now, I'm going to first start with not the law. I'm going to actually say this is an issue Sikhs have not resolved for themselves also. XCPC in 2000 Act actually asked for it. We already do numberings of these things anyway, because when you are releasing sarups or beads, now even that's become an issue. Why is the word bead not used, which is a more traditional word? Well, the word sarup is also used. So which word gets highlighted when, where, by who? We get caught up in semantics. We also get caught up in legally limiting our vocabulary. But we also have to be pragmatic at the same time. And that pragmatism means that none of this should be done by any state. The question for us is, even SGPC is a statutory body, which its very existence is being questioned since 1925 by even some of its founders back then who were jailed. Two, the people who are on both sides of the fence are also questioning SGPC's role in all this. Why did they even agree to the first act without having a self-governance here? And then people who don't like SGPC or are saying this is a statutory body of Indian government, even they don't follow any due process in their own elections. So is it really a democratic body which represents the Sikhs? So there are many issues happening within the Sikh fold. And then when you take those and apply it across different party lines, the political party lines, and various beliefs of the Sikhs, then all of this becomes highly problematic. Because we didn't resolve some things for ourselves, and now we are asking state to resolve it, and state in its own ways does what it does. And it, of course, has Sikhs and non-Sikhs on that side. Part of it is perhaps with good intention, but what we know for sure is the record of last 40 plus years is very, very clear. And anytime people have created these lists available, including Sikh households through voter registration in 1984, they were targeted. Guru Granth Sahib Sarups have been targeted as well. This happened within SGPC jurisdictions of where the Sarups or the beads went missing. So there are many, many issues going on here. I think we need to be, as a community and as people who are trying to understand this issue, need to come up with two answers, or two approaches, if I may say. That Guru Granth Sahib, first of all, is not an object. But what does it mean to be in adab of Guru Granth Sahib? And that adab needs to be in self-governance. In that self-governance, it should not be state which is deciding. It really should be the instruments of the Guru Khalsa Panth, like Gurmatas and Sarbat Khalsas. If we have those active in last 101 years, which they are not letting it be, we will not be in this mess. We are in this mess because there are piecemeal treatments with some good intentions, with some good pragmatism, but hyper-politicization.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that I was thinking about as I was reading about the law and different responses to it was this, like, whether this law that is meant to, like, ostensibly protect the Guru Granth Sahib could actually end up harming Sikhs, like targeting and harming Sikhs. And I wonder about sort of like weaponization of the law, and also about something that was said, I think Bibi Kaur said, about, there's this part of the law that talks about like custodians of the Guru Granth Sahib and their responsibility. And there isn't really a distinction made between, like, I don't know how to say this other than like an honest mistake or negligence, or like maybe you have a kid in your house and maybe the child did something unintentionally because they're a child, right? Like there's all these different scenarios in which like Beadbi can sort of manifest intentionally or unintentionally. And it doesn't seem like there's any kind of attempt to actually add like nuance or understanding or contextualization to those cases. And then in this situation of like placing greater responsibility and sort of potential for then punishment on quote unquote custodians, which she points out is like a colonial term. I just wonder how this could backfire, and sort of like end up in a situation where Sikhs are being kind of like overly surveilled and then overly punished. And also like whether the framing of sort of custodians is helpful, or whether it does more harm, because she seems to be saying that it would do more harm than good. I actually don't fully understand that argument, so I'm asking you purely selfishly to try and understand it a bit better. But yeah, could you talk a bit more about that kind of like who the responsibility is placed on and how this might do more harm than good when we're talking about like nuanced and compassionate understandings of like how Beadbi happens? I don't know. Yeah.
So this is where I think you're onto something here. Bibi Kiranjot Kaur, who is part of the SGPC, she's a former secretary as well, which is part of their executive in the past. She and many others are now vocalizing this. Many Jathebandis, look, whether it is the Nihang Jathebandis, whether it is the mainstream Jathebandis in whatever schools of thoughts they might be, some people say they're from Sikh Missionary College, or they're from Damdami Taksal, or they're from Sampradaya Pranaliyas, or they are the scholars, or they are the jurists. This is all coming together in this sense. So SGPC initially being silent to now not being silent about it, and it's towing an interesting line because they did ask and do certain things, but in the meantime, what it has become is not what it needed to be. What you are after is, look, the law, that's what I'm saying, this is a political solution they're trying to find to actually, but this is not a political solution. In Punjab, there were more than 400 desecrations last time you and I talked.
Yeah.
And let me make this very, very real. As of the last count, there are 480 desecrations out of 597. That's 480 out of 597 in Punjab. 80% of them have to do with Sikhs. So this is not being done by a regular Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Jain, Christian in Punjab. This is systematic. This is widespread. And no state government in last 20 years has done anything about it. They all promise when they're electioneering, including the quote-unquote Panthic Jathebandis, whenever they had influence in those political parties or SGPCs or Akal Takht. They literally haven't been able to do anything about it. So Sikhs of Punjab took it to the protest. That was, the culmination was in the Bargadi Morcha. Real issue is that what you are referring to is, instead, it's going to go after people who in their families didn't quite follow the letter of the law, or the Gurdwara is too small, or didn't have the right understanding by the Granthi. Essentially, the implementation of the law is now being done by the state of Punjab. And state of Punjab has police to enforce that. You invoked Bibi Kiranjot Kaur before this law passed. I was visiting her in January in Amritsar at her house, and I wanted to talk about something else. But she spent most of the time telling me how distressed she is, how the police is being used by these Satkar committees, who nobody knows who these people are anymore, to disturb an average family and removing their Guru Granth Sahib. So this was already happening before the act became the law. So the whole issue, now the term could be custodian, term could be something else. We need to find the right terms. The issue is that there are people who are doing sacrileges and desecrations and beadbis by design. It is not really doing anything about them. This is really going to go after average person who you may not think is being Sikh-like. So this is actually policing the lives of people who identify themselves with Guru Nanak Sahib or Guru Gobind Singh Sahib or the Sikhs, or they may happen to be non-Sikhs like Sindhis this is going to create there has been an institutional failure at the state end. Instead of dealing with state and its agencies' failures, this is now going to go after average person who is not willfully in sacrilege or desecration, who is either not aware or doesn't have the capacity to fully be in the reverence as the protocols may desire, which nobody knows what they are even now, and giving all these powers to the police. So structurally, instead of Panth dealing with this, which is how it's supposed to be, and because Panth doesn't have a mechanism, because SGPC became the one which is supposed to develop those mechanisms, but SGPC is only in Punjab. Let me bring DSGMC in Delhi in there. Let me bring a Haryana's committee in there, and the Paonta Sahib being under different, and the two other Takhts being under different jurisdictions. Because there is a disarray created, and structurally it has been broken, the role is now being given, instead of Akali Nihangs who used to do something like this in traditional form, now this role is going to be played by Punjab police. And then they're making this non-bailable, whatever is negligence, which was unintended, and you made it non-bailable, and you give that person a life sentence. This is not Sikh tradition. We didn't even do this when certain Sikhs forcefully brought the Guru Granth Sahib back from a personal property of the Sodhis of Kartarpur, and Guru Sahib asked them to give it back. We don't do those things. Sikh tradition is not about policing people like this. Sikh tradition definitely is about, if there are political organizations who are creating these designs to do willful desecrations, and they also have done that in last 10 years, and then the state says, or many people say, Sikhs have taken laws into their hand. Well, what choice do they have? This is a question we must delve into. Yes, that did happen in last 10 years, few times, 3 to 5 times. But that happened in the absence of no system or protection. Nobody's asking for the state to do all this. State was asked that there is a willful designs and deal with it. Akal Takht got misused in that. The Dera politics got misused in that. Akal Takht politics and Jathedar and Shomani Akali Dals got misused in it. The state political parties and national political parties got involved, including Sikhs in there, to manipulate all this. So absolutely, this is an overreach. There is a lot of insensitivity in the handling of these things. There is a lot of misinterpretation from a Sikh ethos angle. This is going to create a havoc. It already had a havoc. It's not dealing with the real issue. It's dealing with things which are less than 1% of an issue. Where it was 80% of the issue, it's not dealing with that.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm getting slightly teary-eyed about it, but I think maybe if I can offer for diaspora listeners, I think you and I have maybe spoken about this before, but there's cases of kind of, at least where I am now in the UK, of people having their Guru Granth Sahibs forcefully taken from their homes because they are deemed irreverent because they were too old to maybe take care of the Guru Granth Sahib the way that they had before. And I know of this having happened in the UK. And I think maybe that can make it a little bit more real for, diaspora Sikhs who are kind of what's all the fuss about? Because when we hear those stories, we have a very visceral reaction of how do you police reverence? I think it's a question I keep asking myself in situations that are much more human and complicated than somebody has malintention. And I think that's why this conversation is really hitting home for me in a way I didn't expect. I think you said this thing about that's not our tradition, and we have these examples of thoughtful and thoughtful and nuanced approaches to all of these situations. And I wonder if like this law is even really doing what we were hoping for. And it doesn't feel like it is. It feels like there's like all this punitive and kind of incredible levels of punishment, but I didn't see anything about prevention, and I didn't see anything about like addressing sort of the root causes of cases of Beadbi, whether they're intended or not. And so I wonder if you can maybe give us a like what is a Sikh perspective on how we might start to think about this outside of just like throw the most intense and sort of extreme punishment on those that we deem to have committed this crime. Because it's also like what you said before, it's like we have all these unpunished cases that are systematic or were systematic, and that are like clear-cut cases of Beadbi that haven't gone addressed. So I guess my question is like, what could this look like if we actually addressed it in a quote-unquote Sikh-like way and emphasized prevention instead of just like punitive punishment?
Well, let's bring all the players into it, right?
Sure.
We are not into punitive stuff. Even if the Sikh part of the Sikh behavior has become like that now, that has never been the overwhelming aspect of the Sikh behavior. Have we taken care of desecrations in a particular way? Yes. And those everyone very well knows. 84 had to do with it. When Massa Rangar did it, Sikhs did it back then too. They have to do with particular moments in Sikh history. But we never had an average Sikh or a Jathebandi was never out to get anyone. Average Sikh, who otherwise was unknown, became known because when they saw state and its agencies was doing it. So that's the first point. Average Sikh doesn't do it. Average Sikh responds to it when they feel there is something nefarious about going on. Second thing to keep in mind is, because we don't have our own governance, even when Sikh Jathebandis try to do this in whichever capacity they do it in, largely forced way, whether in UK and whether in Panjab, whether in Indore, we all know there are incidents happening in all these places. Their intent is right because we don't have our own Gurmata traditions on these. The sovereignty of the Panth, if you want to use the word custodian, if I may present it like that, the Panth is the custodian of the Granth. That's it. There is no individual, no organization, no Jathebandi. It is the Guru Khalsa Panth who's the custodian of the Guru Granth Sahib. Because of our 100-year plus manipulation is continuing by state and its parties, which involve Sikhs as well, through their own bodies, both statutory or otherwise, unless we come up and create our own self-governance, we have to seriously think about this. We have been raising those conversations in various aspects, and this belongs in this aspect as well. Whether it is the Sarbat Khalsa, whether it is the self-governance of Gurdwaras, whether it is dealing with the larger Panthic issues, Sikh issues, or global issues, it is the independent and free Akal Takht, which is supposed to be governing all this for us, not any state or its agencies, including their police. How do we get there? That's a long-term work, which requires people who are Gurmat-oriented, people who understand theology and global nation-state systems. We need to figure that out. Now, the pragmatic part, then in the meantime, what do you do? Well, in the meantime, let's make it very real again. Everyone's trying to milk this right now, and they're going to milk this. When I'm saying everyone, those who are proponents of it. Why am I saying this? Let's recapture. Aam Aadmi Party proposed this bill in the Punjab Legislative Assembly called Vidhan Sabha. The BJP appointed governor made it a law, who hasn't been signing so many other things. There's a complete breakdown of governance in Punjab. If anyone was to study it in the last 10 years, they can, including a former chief secretary of Punjab just wrote this an editorial this week. Suresh Kumar is his name. So if you really want to understand if there's governance in Punjab, no, there isn't. There are structural problems. Instead, they choose to do this and come together on this issue. because it is electioneering politics. And guess what? Yes, there are one or two individuals in each party who opposed it, but Shiromani Akali Dal, Indian National Congress, and all other parties unanimously passed it in the Assembly, Punjab Assembly of India. Now, what does that tell us? Nobody really gives a damn about the real issue. They just want to say and show and display that we are trying to do something about it. It is ceremonial at the end of the day. It is not even dealing with, there's an example we can use to apply here. If you create a strict punishment for murder, does it stop murders? No. Does it deter? Yes. But it's not an exact analogy, but I'm just saying it. In Sikh case, if this is the murdering of the Guru Granth Sahib in that sense, and this is important, I'm using that because in Sikh sentiment, we use the word panna as well as ang. Again, I'm not saying there's a monolith in Sikh understanding, but there is this breadth of understanding by the practitioners. Yes, it is a page because it is a granth, but yes, it is guru, so there is a ang as well. So the sentiments like these, when the state chooses not to stop that kind of a murderous campaign, which is systematic and widespread. Again, I'm saying 480 cases out of 597 cases by the last count in Punjab and desecrations involve Sikhs, which means Guru Granth Sahibs and Gurdwaras. There is something very, very seriously wrong with this approach. So pragmatic thing to do will be SGPC needs to really think how to deal with this, because what they asked for and was produced in 2008, which has gone through, after that was a Bargadi incident of 2015. Then in 2015, there was a IPC 295A, which was an amendment on the implementation of a law. In 2018, there was another IPC amendment. In 2025, there was a presentation of offenses bill presented. All of that didn't happen, but this now happened. None of them have taken care of those incidents. So the pragmatic thing to do will be how to really Akal Takht Jathedar, who's also appointed by SGPC, who's also Karajkari, by the way. Karajkari means temporary in that sense, interim. This is another politics we have to understand from Sri Akal Takht Sahib and how the manipulations are happening. That if somebody takes a stand here, we know they're all short-lived because we don't have self-governance. But if a person in Congress speaks the right thing, a person among Akali speaks the right thing, a person in BJP says the right thing, they're all our allies. They're our allies to do something pragmatic about it. What is not happening pragmatically is what caused all these issues, which were all nefarious and political. They included manipulations by political parties, SGPCs, Akal Takht politics, and all of that. If all of them are serious about it, instead of saying this law is good and this act is good, they really should be doing something before the elections. But there seems to be not talking about that at all. This is just being shown as a ceremonial will. My ask to those parties and those who are interested, you always have two options. And this third option is of the reform. Be very, very serious about reform. Everything in the bill may not work out, but this bill is not going to work because it does not go to the crux of the real issue, which is all political, of the desecrations by political nefarious designs. If you don't believe in the reform or simultaneously want to work toward the ideal is reviving the mechanisms of Gurmata, doing them through Guru Khalsa Panth being the custodian, which is going to have representations of all sorts of Jathebandis from Punjab, from Inspora, from diaspora, who has leading individuals who understand how jurisprudence and laws work, what the Gurmat tradition is about these things. They have to come together and develop a real self-governance mechanism for Guru Granth Sahib as well.
Yeah, that's all really helpful, very comprehensive. I think I think I have like one final question that maybe we can close on. So many people who are going to be listening to this, or I guess who are listening to this when it comes out, are going to be sitting outside of the context of this bill, this law, and sort of the history behind it. Maybe you can talk to all of us, me included, a little bit more about what you feel like is largely at stake when it comes to this question of Panthic sovereignty or for Sikhs at large. Because I think there is still this kind of, it's that perpetual sort of disconnect that we've talked about before of like, well, that's happening over there and I'm over here. But to me, the things that you've said about like Guru Granth and Guru Panth and our institutions and our traditions, I think when we don't understand those things in like a real lived way, then we say things like, what are you complaining about? You live in a modern nation state. You have to deal with the law of the land. And I think there's like this larger thing that I've been thinking about of like, do we even understand like principally Sikh notions of sovereignty and self-governance? And if we don't, then like, yeah, then what, I guess. So I'm asking you this larger question of what's at stake.
At stake is the sovereignty of Sikhs. This is what's at stake. Look, I'm not aware of any Sikh who does not want to follow the law of the land unless the law of the land is unjust and racist and regressive and causes more problems. Isn't that how we deal with in most of the world? If the law is unjust, people still fight for it, or against it rather. And if something is done in a haste, that's why we have repeals. If something is manipulated, they have these conversations. Anyone who opposes the current administration, they've been having this conversation for the last 10 years so many times. Anyone who's opposing what is happening in America, they're having conversations about kind of wrong precedences and the laws which have been passed by the US Congress and executive orders in the US. No, we do live in 2026. Nobody's saying don't have laws, but Guru Granth Sahib, laws regulating Guru Granth Sahib's, that is direct interference on the sovereignty of Sikhi. I don't think most people understand it because we have had 101 years of this legal manipulations where we talk about a particular section or a particular clause and we debate the merits and demerits of it. Yes, but the larger issue is we don't have self-governance. This law in Panjab should have been about what to do on the people who were systematically desecrating Guru Granth Sahib. So sovereignty of Guru Granth Sahib and sovereignty of Guru Khalsa Panth, this really needs to be understood by Sikhs very well, which is largely understood by Sikh Jathebandis and Sikhs who understand Sikhi based on Sikh traditions. I would submit to you, it is also understood by those who are trying to control Sikhs from day one. Because they did not succeed legally until in 1925. So I'm going to go back to that because 1925 is the first time Guru Granth Sahib came under a law, an act. And since then, I've given you progressions in the last 20 years, but those progressions have been going on, the conversations have been going on since 1925. So sovereignty of the Sikhs is not about sovereignty of particular land. We are not discussing Punjab as an empire or its manifestation in 1940s of Sikhistan or in 1980s onwards, Khalistan. That's a separate matter, which has its own merits and demerits, and people should debate and work on those projects. This really is about, doesn't matter where in the world Guru Granth Sahib is, doesn't matter where in the world the Khalsa lives, who considers themselves to be part of the Panth. This is their personal and corporate responsibility to put together a self-governing system which works in 2026. The self-governing system has been legally not allowed since 1925. So that's the real work. So the relationship of sovereignty is not just political for Sikhs. It has a very loving devotional element in Sikh vocabulary that's called Pahupagat. And it has a very submissive element to the command or the hukum of Vaheguru or Ekko Akar, which Sikhs by design do not give this to any earthly authority, be it a head of a state who's a Sikh or even a Sikh state, or whether it is the Panjab state or the Indian state or any other nation. So that's the thing which I think is not understood, but it's felt by almost all Sikhs. It is definitely felt by the Khalsa. There's no question about that. Even when Khalsa is in a subservient position temporarily, even when they were doing that under the British, even the British knew, and that's why they didn't make these laws in the first 70 years. It is when the Indian systems were being run by Indian bureaucrats, Bengali trained and other trained, these kind of laws were designed to control really the political activism of the Sikhs by controlling their gurdwaras and other spaces when the British were losing control over them. Now, that's one thing. Second thing, which I want us, regardless of where we are in our journeys of Sikhi, we do have the protocol tradition exists in Sikhi. We just, we usually, you will notice that we keep it among the Sikhs when we talk about it. And that's how it's supposed to be. Until somebody is designing from outside, then we have ways to deal with it. We have Maryada. We have our own traditions. But what we don't have anymore is, whether it's in UK, whether it is in US or Canada or whichever country we may be living in, we actually have no institutional authority. That's what's the issue. Because when you have no institutional authority, some Sikhs try to exert that, sometimes with a good intention, but it doesn't work out because it is not collective institutional. Mm-hmm. So we have Maryadas. We may have disagreements on some of them, but we have never gone out to go do kind of nonsense we are seeing in the last 20 years, which are being done by non-Sikhs through some political actors. So we are not against the laws of the land, but the laws of the land cannot be regulating our Maryadas, our traditions, and our protocols. So those are, if we understand these largely two things, then our respect, our reverence on the Guru is not based on just protocol, it's based on devotional love. It's based on submission to hukum, the command. Then I think largely we can come together to create an independent self-governance via Akal Takht Sahib. And then largely where needed, we can come to terms with the laws of the land, whichever country we might be in this case in Punjab, India.
Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. This has been really, and it's been helpful for me. And I hope that it's been helpful for our listeners, especially those who are just kind of reading the news and wondering how to wade through all the information. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me about it.
Yeah, of course. And when something is in a haste, this is what happens.
Yeah.
I do want to take this opportunity to also say the state and those who are pro-law should not say Sikhs are in haste now. They're not. Sikhs have been very patient. The Sikh collective has been very patient. We have been patiently working through these designs of legalities for 101 years. So if some of us are advocating for original systems we have in its incarnation of 2026, please be mindful. This is the reason. It's been the state is making it haste. Sikhs are not making it haste.
Yeah.
And I think this is for people who are dealing with Sikh issues need to also understand this about us. We actually don't have a debate on blasphemy. I'm going to go back to that. And I'm going to cite something from Bhai Nandlal Goya here. And it is very, very important because he's written this in a ghazal. And ghazals, he has written this in love for Guru Gobind Singh at the time. And he talks about himself. So this is the Sikh attitude, right? The Sikh has, he says, Az nizai kufrodeen dil barhamast, bardar dargahe maula al-giyas. I mean, if I can just paraphrase that in simple English, he's basically said a dil ki in the heart, huh? He's like and then there's frustration. He uses that word, that my heart is frustrated. And frustrated on what? On kufr o deen, that what is kufr, blasphemy, and what is deen, what is religion. So he's internally debating this. So Sikhs, this is our tradition. We internally debate this. What does our heart have to say on it? Because heart is getting frustrated within. This inner frustration is you're seeing coming out now at a mind level and at a physical level of some of the Sikhs. But we actually do this. By Nandalal Goya, the court of Guru Gobind Singh records it. So, but what he's saying is this is my internal debate between blasphemy and religion, between sacrilege and religion, between desecration and faith. But what is he really after? In there he says, yearly my plea is at the door of the Mawla. Mawla is, I don't know, I mean, it's an Arabic word. It's generally said something you are close to. That's where etymologies come in. Something you are near, something which has authority over you. That's why I'm going after that. So Painan Lal Goya invokes the Sikh sentiment. Let me have that debate within, and let me get closer to the one who has authority over me. This is the Sikh attitude, which is largely the Sikh Panthic attitude. State and its laws do not have authority over me. We will figure out what is blasphemous for us, what is adab, as we were saying, what is Beadbi for us. Let us debate within. Don't frustrate us with this, because we are only going to go to the door of Mawla, the one who has authority, the one we want to be near. That is where we discover how to pragmatically deal with things when we are dealing with nation-state issues and the laws as well. Our conversation is internal. Our conversation is at heart level. And our conversation is where we give authority to the one.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. Thank you all for listening.
Well, I do have an ask then. It's wonderful
yes.
to know this. I think the ask is to the listeners, get to know this issue. Don't participate in Beadbi conversation without understanding what adab is for us. Do understand that the laws are manipulative, sometimes even in their good intentions. Ask whichever party you support, whichever jathebandi you support, to really delve into the issue, develop self-governance systems, and equip some people to deal with the legal issues in whichever country and state they might be popping up in. Currently, they are in India and Punjab.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And thank you for listening, to those of you who are listening. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Thank you, Jasleen. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
You were listening to Sikhcast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.